Welcome everybody to this session from Alan Scott, FHIR integration from a traditional integration perspective. Um, Please note the session is pre-recorded, so I'm going to play a video. In the meantime, you can obviously post your question in the Q&A section so we can discuss them live after the video is done. For now, enjoy watching.
Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to talk to you about FHIR integration from a traditional integration perspective. My name is Alan Scott. I'm currently the Chief Architect for North American Healthcare for Red Hat. My email address is found below, alscott@redhat.com. A little bit about me before we get started. I've spent about 25 years in the healthcare integration, application development, and data platform areas through all various aspects of healthcare, tons of building experience. I've had the privilege of architecting and leading several of the largest integration efforts in the world that exist in healthcare on multiple integration platforms. Currently, one of them has over 85,000 active and concurrent connections and moves about 220 million daily transactions through it. There's also a lot of detailed experience around HL7, FHIR, EDI, and NCPDP integrations that I've done in my background. Along with that, I've also had the privilege of having several products certified for meaningful use and also have multiple healthcare patents for many different areas of healthcare. Today, what I want to focus on for our agenda is a little bit of discussion about the interoperability regulations around our topic around shifting of healthcare needs and how those shifting needs are going to help us to think beyond traditional connecting of systems. Then we're going to talk about transformational architectures. There'll be some time for Q&A. And at the end of this PDF, what you will have as an appendix is some of the work that we have done in the open source realm as we talk about it. Again, this is not to position anything we've done. This is just to showcase the mindset that we believe the industry needs to have. As we think about the details for the CMS interoperability rules that they've put forward this year, if you think about the trends are very specific. It's very much about modernization. It's very much around consumerization. Clearly, it's about moving data beyond healthcare and organizations' four walls. And from my perspective, it's also about cloud enablement, which doesn't mean public cloud. It could mean hybrid cloud. It can mean anything, but it's about moving things in a new direction. As part of those regulations, government organization that put this forward, CMS, took a look at the standards and they settled upon Fast Health Interoperability Resources, FHIR version R4. They also wanted to make sure that when you built apps to this standard, since it's new and modern, they could be secure. That's where the smart on FHIR comes in. In order to do that, they wanted to also guarantee that they used leading industry technologies that other companies, other industries, other organizations have that are well vetted out, like OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. But if you think about all that, forget about the trends, forget about the new standards that they're pushing forward, think about the benefits. The benefits of this are about less legacy and vendor controlled connectivity and data access restrictions, and the ability for you to implement not only newer technologies, but newer capabilities, refresh your tech perspective, and get modern, especially as you think about the new digital worlds that are coming into place and being. So with all that being said, I think it's important to focus on the shifting of healthcare integration needs. And as you think about it, there's a few key things to focus on that I always like to talk to people about. One is disruption without chaos. Disruption is normally very chaotic to organizations. What you need to focus on is how do you do that without creating chaos or minimizing that? Because without that, you can't really have innovation. All you've got is one idea that won't go anywhere because it's just too disruptive to what the organization is doing. Another critical thing is an open source mindset. You absolutely at my core believe need to focus on how do I do things in an open manner, whether that means open and community sourcing your code, whether that means open sourcing your efforts only internally in your organization, which is a form of community sourcing, or that means just putting your source code on GitHub, because in the end, that code artifact, the power of many is better than the power of a smaller team to do it. Then you also have to think about the shifting in healthcare about speed. This is about the ability to realign to business needs quickly, not to build new cool things. Building new cool things is one thing. Being able to help your business realign is even more important. And as you're thinking about that, how do you think about that shifting need about expert-based systems? And if you think about open source, it's all about more than one helping you solve a problem. Expert-based systems are the same thing. How do I build things so that I don't have to go back and rebuild, recompile, re-engineer my code constantly? How do I take the best that the industry has to offer and inject that into what I'm doing? Then as you think about all those shifting needs, reusability and extensibility must absolutely be at the forefront of what you're doing, because otherwise you're going to end up with the same solution design, the same integration patterns you have, nothing new, just another code asset that people are going to have to try and figure out how to work around, through, or get beyond. And the last thing as you think about those shifting needs is that limiting of tool replacement. Now, why would I mention this? Because it's important for that less disruption, less friction, less chaos, to how do we use what we have potentially if available. And I will tell you this, based on the new standards, most of the tooling that organizations have can be used at some level, at some scale. So that limiting of that tool replacement also helps limit disruption and helps improve innovation. With all that being said, as you think about traditional integration, it has to be around and beyond connecting. What that means is don't build anything point to point. Start with that open mindset first. And what that means is you have to meet data where it is. Don't focus on everything must be in the same shape or process that I must get to it. That's the traditional integration side of the house. You help shape that future. Meet data where it is. How do I get reusability and extensibility in everything I do? So we always want to think about that as a focus point, right? In other words, if I've got to take data from 10 sources and I know I need to build a specific resource, how can I abstract that and do that once so that the 11th system that comes around, or there's another acquisition, our uplift is less impacting to the system very quick. The other thing I'll always say is make sure that when you're building things, build for the resource and not for the FHIR server. So often what I see is companies choose a product, it's going to help us do this. Everything they do is around that product. And all you've done is move technical debt from many places now into another product and another capability. So think beyond that, build to the resource with reusability and extensibility, and only think cloud native. Don't think about how many servers it's going to take to run, what it's going to do. If we do our jobs correctly with this next transformational area, the user experience, the data experience, the developer experience will all be focused because it's cloud native. So with all that being said, if you take a look at this, there's two architectures that you can have. The current architecture I've implemented, so many people have implemented, and it's focused around a consumer doing something through an API, connecting to an integration platform, pulls data from a source, gives it back to them. Or the source feeds all the data into the integration platform. When the API requests it, all the data comes back. Very tried and true integration platform for those of us that are using either technologies that are what I would call black box, right? And the dozens that are out there in the integration space, or code, very common design pattern. I would encourage you to think about the future. Don't focus on the names that we've put as some of the products here. but focus on the experience on the future side. Notice what we focused on the side is all around the source defines where the data is. We're meeting the data at the source. We're using intelligence to pull that data in, and we're leveraging the asset of the FHIR server and the system behind it to help us drive value and information. We're not focused on, oh, everything must live there. We're focused on driving intelligence to and from it, and then we can help figure out what that integration pattern is in the future. With all that being said, I would love to hear about any questions you have, and I look forward to that. And just again, from perspective, I've included our links to some of our projects that we have that showcase open source capabilities that you could implement to look at how we focused on FHIR and Blue Button and things of that nature. I want to thank everybody. In this time of a pandemic, please stay safe, and I look forward to any questions you might have, and please feel free to email me if you need anything else.
And that was the video. Alan, thank you very much for the clear message that you're sending. Actually, before the questions start coming in, it takes some time. Well, you can actually turn your camera on if you want to.
There you go.
Yeah, great. Is there any lessons that you've learned during, well, obviously you have a lot of experience in this field, as you showed on the second slide. Is there anything that others can take away, or common mistakes you might have perhaps may have made that others should not fall into?
Yeah, I mean, it was key. Thank you for that. It was key when I did this talk. The message I was trying to convey is, we've all done great work, and there's new standards afoot. I'm encouraging everybody to not make some of the mistakes I made, where I use the same things I've done for 20 years in healthcare, and then it's a new standard. I could do the same things. It's not only is it a new standard, it's the time for us to reimagine how we do things. It's a time for us to help transform the organizations and the teams that we work with, because it's needed, right? And if we keep doing things the same exact way, we're just going to get different solutions, but they are the same. And as we've implemented solutions, that's why I wanted to give the talk. I wanted that traditional perspective. Now it's about enterprise application integration, right? It's about bringing the app dev mindset into integration. It's no longer about just having a black box product that does things. It's about, how do I deliver capabilities, and how do I start to build Legos and widgets that I can reuse, versus just falling into the same patterns, right? Because they've modernized the way interfaces do. They've modernized those capabilities. We need to modernize our processes and our thoughts around it as well.
So it's basically a combination between traditional methods and being forward thinking at the same time.
Yeah, so many people focus on, now that I've got a FHIR server, I'm going to do the same thing I did in my integration space. I'm just going to pour it all over there. And what we've seen is there's tremendous, do not take this as the vendors aren't great in the space, do not. But if all you're doing is moving technical debt from a COTS integration product to a FHIR server and everything must live there, all you've really done is have another giant repository. So you have another place of debt, whether it's technical, functional, operational. And is that system really built to do that? I don't know, but I know that you could put enough around that system to use it for what it's meant to be used for, right? Because it's not all about everything must go to that server so I can then use that server anymore. It's how do I do things in a different manner?
All right. Thank you very much. A question from the audience came in. Can you elaborate on building around resource versus around the server?
Sure. So too often everybody builds for a very specific function, and they focus on, I have to implement this for this to be successful on whatever FHIR server you choose, right? So in our world, what we focused on, and again, this is just experience, we focused on building the capability, building to the resource, and then the FHIR server is configurable in everything we do. So we use all the common ones when we work with our customers, whether you like Microsoft's Azure FHIR server, IBM's FHIR server or the JPA FHIR server. We haven't tested with Vonk, but I know it's good because I've used it in my life, right? But those, we wanted to make sure that we have a design pattern that's scalable, and we wanted to build components that you could reuse. So if you don't like the vendor, it doesn't scale, whatever happens, you can move, because at that point, all you're doing is flipping out an endpoint, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by doing that. So focus on how do I build to the resource, and then how do I use the server as the conduit to get data to it. That makes sense to...
Yeah, definitely. Clear explanation. There's another question. You mentioned cloud only, but what do we do about those hospitals that will accept only on-premise deployments? As the cloud/on-prem requirements are sometimes different, how long will we support two separate deployment styles?
So I don't want to seem like I'm promoting where I work. So let me just take this stance, because that what I tell people, and this is where app dev and integration can work together and transform. It's all about choosing the container as the unit of work. Then it's a matter of the organization can choose where they want to run that, right? Because the container is almost ubiquitous now. So in other words, you put it into a YAML file, which is a construct that it can run. If somebody likes Docker, phenomenal. If somebody likes OpenShift, wonderful. Someone likes EKS for Amazon, yay. I mean, you know, Microsoft has their own implementation, but the key thing is that container of work, because then you can shift between multiple things. You almost become an ability to be Switzerland. You don't have to take a position, and you can support everybody's needs in a consistent manner. And if you look at what the industry is doing, that's what the industry is focused on. Like the great folks that are building FHIR servers that are out there are focused on, how do I put this into a YAML file? Then you could choose whatever place you want to run it, right? There's no, oh, you must run it here, right? And when I say cloud native first, that's what I mean. How do I build assets that are small and atomic? Even if you build them small and atomic and they have to run on a server, you've at least done your job so that they're more contained. But you have to think that way first. Because if you build big stuff, what's going to happen? After the 100th user comes on, the server tips over, everybody has a bad experience. So how do you build things as small as you can for that extensibility and reuse?
Right. Do you actually experience a lot of pushback when it comes to cloud services?
Healthcare is like other industries. The adoption is it's growing, but I get the reason why, and honestly, the reason is the vendor community, because so much of the data would have to be in the cloud to begin with, right? So it's almost like you have to have everything loaded up there. That's a big shift for a lot of organizations. But I think if you're using cloud native as a means of artifact building, then the question, then it becomes different. Again, that's why I said that first step is focus on the container as the unit of work. Where you run it becomes where you run it.
All right, thank you very much. We almost ran out of time, so yeah, it left me nothing but to thank you very much for your time and for answering the questions. Is there something else you still want to add before we?
No, I would just encourage everybody in the last slide in the PDF. We've got several artifacts out there. We're not trying to do anything except build our open community around how we build intelligence into data. So I would encourage everybody to take a look. You have my email address, give us feedback. If you like it, please let us know that you do. If you don't like it, please spend a few minutes and tell us why. We're always working to make things better. And always remember that open source is about the power of a community versus the power of a team. So y'all have a great day, and thank you.
Yeah. So